Morning, and welcome to the Mental Breakdown Morning Show. I'm Dr. Bernie Wilkinson.
And I'm Dr. Richard Marshall.
And it's Friday, December 16th, 2016. Very excited about today. Just because it's today.
It's Friday.
That's right. So today we're going to talk, today we're revisiting, we're wrapping up our week of revisiting things.
Right.
And today I'm excited to talk about what our topic is today, because it revisits something from about 3 weeks ago.
Right.
When we talked about, at the end of the week, revisiting and dealing with any conflict, finding resolution for confrontations and conflicts, so that you can end the week positively and start the next week off on a positive foot.
That's right.
And so we're revisiting that because, man,
the great Jewish tradition of Shabbat.
Yeah.
And it is Friday.
It is Friday, which is why we chose to do it on Friday. See, we think ahead just a little bit.
You knew.
But we're going to talk about it today because, man, we've had some really great questions since that.
Right.
Since we did that show. And the primary question has been, do I really have to deal with all conflicts before I can move on?
That was really, I hadn't thought about it before. I mean, we've thought about it, but we hadn't talked about it. But you're right. You have this, it's not an obligation, you have this desire,
right?
I guess the better word, to take care of all conflict by sundown Friday, so that you can move into the Sabbath
transition between the 2 weeks.
So you take care of those nagging problems and you move into. But somebody called or texted, and said, well, what if I can't? What if it's a problem that cannot be resolved?
Right.
And I thought, well, what kind of problem would that be? And then they said, well, my sister won't talk to me.
Right.
Or my that's the biggest problem, is that somebody who will not talk to you. They just refuse to negotiate to solve the problem.
Right. Right.
So that's a major issue. A problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
So this question it's come up a couple of times. You've been contacted by a few people with it, and I've been contacted with a few people about that same question. And so we thought we would kind of address it a little bit today.
Right.
Because anytime you're talking about conflict resolution, it takes two people. Both people have to agree that, okay, our goal is to resolve this conflict. And if one person, for whatever reason, whether they refuse to talk to you or they see the conflict differently than you, they refuse to accept that, you don't have to end the conflict with an agreement. You just have to agree to disagree in the very least, right? But if you have at least one person in the group doesn't agree to those terms, doesn't desire or have the same motivation to end the conflict, well, you're at a stalemate.
We taught a course at USF. Right. You've taught it, and I've taught it, about communication. And we used a book that the entire book was devoted to solving problems by talking, and listening. It was mainly about listening better, but the whole book was based on, here's how you solve these relationship problems, and it made it sound reasonable, almost easy. Oh, that's all I have to do. But then you realize that it takes two people to want to solve the problem. Right. If only one person wants to solve it, you can solve your part of it, you can solve your half, but this person may not, as you said, they may not want to end the war. Right. They may not want to end the conflict. Right. And so you're just not going to be able to negotiate or reason toward a resolution if the other person doesn't want to be a part of that discussion.
Right. So if that's a person that lives in your home, that's a big issue. We talked about, what are some of the cues or indications that therapy, couples therapy or something may be indicated. That may be one of them.
That's where it's most acute is when you're living in the same place. Right. If you're distant, if you're living in different homes or different cities or different states, it's a lot easier. Right. But if you have a married couple, or a couple with children,
right,
that's a much different kind of problem.
Right. If not, if it is a person outside of the home, then I think that the strategy that we'll use is a little bit different, and that is, when we're looking at conflicts, when we're looking at problems, oftentimes, especially if they're living outside of the home, mm-hmm. we have a tendency sometimes to give those issues much more power than they deserve. And so what happens in that is that you had this conflict, this exchange, and we ruminate over it, we reevaluate it, we think about it a lot. We're not getting anywhere with it, we're just thinking about it a lot. And we're giving that conflict a lot more strength and power and control over us. Right. And so what we need to do in a situation where you can't resolve the conflict, I think that the ultimate goal of this whole process is coming to peace with things. Mm-hmm. And so what we need to do in those situations then is we need to find a way to come to peace with ourselves. This
is if you're in the same place.
Right.
Right. That's right. If somebody if you're geographically separated, it's much easier.
Right.
But if you're living together and the other person simply refuses to talk about it, mm-hmm. address it, what you can still take care of yourself.
Right.
And you might have to somehow reach your own resolution mm-hmm. in private about what your decision is going to be about this situation.
Exactly.
Right? And that's still resolving the conflict.
Right. It serves the same purpose.
Exactly.
And you're right. This is especially the case when somebody's living in the same home.
Right.
Because those are the situations that are a little bit more challenging. If a person is outside of your home, you should hopefully be able to get through that process much easier.
Right.
To where you say, you know what, we just don't see eye to eye on this.
Right.
I can accept that he or she sees it differently than I do. Mm-hmm. I don't understand how he or she sees it, but.
And you can say to the person, you can write, text, email, however you want to do it. Just say, look, I'm ready to talk about this whenever you are. My heart is open.
Right.
I will make time. That's all that you can do.
Right.
And it really is up to the other person.
Right.
You're here and you're available.
Right.
I'll be happy to talk about this whenever you're ready.
Right.
That's taking care of that problem.
Right.
If you're living in the same house, it's going to be a lot.
And
we deal with it all the time.
Right.
There are problems that insinuate themselves into a marriage relationship or some type of intimate relationship. And the problems arise, and one person just doesn't want to talk about it.
Right.
Okay. So then the other person who would like to resolve it has to make a decision about how am I going to deal with this now.
Right.
You can do what we urge you to do is not become passive aggressive.
Right.
Not to become aggressive, and not to just pretend that it doesn't exist. You have to take care of yourself emotionally.
Right. Absolutely. So again, the bottom line is that the whole purpose, the goal, is to resolve your conflict.
That's right. That's right.
That's best done when you can agree and mm-hmm. come to a resolution together. But if you can't, then you still have to take care of yourself.
That's right.
And so that's really the overall mission or goal here.
That's right, because we're saying you have to resolve the conflict.
Right.
Well, you might not be able to resolve it with the other person, but you can still resolve your conflict.
Exactly.
Right.
Because too often, that's what I meant earlier with.
Yeah.
Too often, the conflict is in ourselves.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. Two people can disagree about something, but the more that you make out of it, mm-hmm. the more that you build it up and let it take over, the more it's a you problem than it is a.
And I think it was Monday of this week where we talked about overcoming obstacles.
Right.
There's always a solution. Always a resolution. And this is a good time to apply that. That even if you have to solve your conflict yourself, mm-hmm. even if you're left to do it yourself, there's always a solution.
Right.
Okay. It might not be immediately evident, but you're always going to be able to find one.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you have to talk to other people.
Yeah.
But there's always a solution.
Right. So, all right. So tonight, when you're sitting down and getting ready for dinner, and if you are implementing any of these types of strategies, consider that. Especially if you have some of those really challenging ones that you just haven't been able to resolve yet.
That's right. And
resolve it within yourself.
And the most difficult ones will be with the people you care the most about.
The ones you're sitting at the table
with. Your
with.
spouse, your children, the people who are closest to you.
Yeah.
They're going to be the most difficult.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well, that wraps up another
week.
Wonderful week.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys have a great weekend. We will see you back here on Monday morning for another episode. And so be happy, have fun, and have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
All right, bye-bye.